And just to confirm the category, it's Outlast, no out of bounds.
Yes.
All right, I just wanted to make sure I had that right on stream. All right, if you're ready to go, I'm ready
Okay.
whenever. I'll count you down.
Okay. So one thing I did want to explain real quick. We start at this specific checkpoint right here, admin_gates. Because in the intro cutscene of the game, there's no meaningful gameplay. And there's also the off chance that you can crash the game in the intro if you go too quickly, oddly enough. And we also can get straight into the action this way. And timer starts as soon as timing starts as soon as I start moving.
All right, that'll be, just give me a countdown, and you'll be good to go.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, go. Alright, so this is Outlast. As the category name suggests, no out of bounds. We will be beating the game, ideally fast, without doing any skips that involve going out of bounds. For horror games like this, you might think, oh, it's a no out of bounds run, so it will be a fairly boring run. Well, that is not the case with this game, because even with that restriction, there's a lot of tricks at our disposal that I'll be doing throughout the run. In fact, I'll be doing one glitch right here where I just straight up face the door. So, whenever doors move in this game, they do not have hitboxes, I believe, or maybe their hitbox shrinks a little. And if we close it in just the right way, that makes it so when the door is standing still in the door frame there, it has no collision, so we can just go right through it. And here's another glitch involving doors, which is called the wall rider. So, whenever you do an animation that involves opening a door or even vaulting over an object, your hitbox gets shrunken down quite a bit. And with your hitbox being so small, you can go through quite a few walls or objects throughout the game. There's pretty clever uses of that for out-of-bounds skips in the other categories, but obviously that's banned in this. And here we get a quick cutscene where we meet two major characters of the game in terms of the plot, Chris Walker and Father Martin. They aren't too important right now, so don't worry about them. Also, Lambo, if at any point you can, if you have anything to interject with, feel free. Like just any commentary about the game or anything like that. So that trick I just did, where I sort of clipped into the wall, it might have looked like I was going out of bounds with that trick, but I wasn't, because I still remained within the map while doing it. Sometimes with the tricks that involve wall riding, you'll see my camera go out of bounds, but don't worry about it. I'm still in bounds while doing those tricks. There's a couple of tricks later on where I could fall out of bounds if I'm not careful, but more on that when they come up. We're doing another wall right here. That's actually really hard, so hopefully I get it. If I don't get it, then I'll just do this section as normal, which I didn't get. So what I was meant to do there was do another wall ride to skip past this cutscene where this guy jump scares you in the wheelchair. But I didn't get it, so we just have to sit through the cutscene. That saves about 10 seconds if you get it. Yeah, about 10 seconds or so. So something you'll notice me doing is jumping towards objects, like this keypad right here. Or not, yeah, keypad, but, how do I explain it? Oh yeah, so jumping towards objects is faster by a few frames or so, compared to just running up towards them normally. And another glitch I did there is an animation cancel, which is done by simply pressing crouch whenever you initiate the animation. It only works on certain animations though, not every single animation in the game. So I went into this corner of the door frame here for a specific reason. Chris Walker here will bash down the door, and with the setup that I did, when he bashed down the door, his hitbox went through me because my hitbox just sort of clipped into the door, and that let me leave as soon as he bashed down the door. What you're intended to do there is wait in the locker until Chris Walker leaves the room, but that's really slow, so we do that instead. The categories on the insane difficulty, which is the hardest difficulty of this game, does in fact wait in the locker in that little sequence. But that's the only instance of that you'll see in speedruns of this game. So you have a brief sort of fetch quest, as I call it, where we have to turn on a few switches in order to turn power back on. There was a cutscene in the security room just earlier where Father Martin shut off the power, so you have to turn it back on. We're going to animation cancel to skip the animation. It's actually really easy to do. Just like I said, you just simply have to press crouch as soon as you start the animation. So upcoming, when we go in the security room for the second time, I'll be doing the first save and quit of the run as soon as I interact with it. Menu lag there, but that's fine. The game can do that sometimes, and it's really annoying. So occasionally in the bottom left, you'll see a piece of text that says saving. Whenever that text appears, that means I have hit a checkpoint or an autosave spot. And a property with the checkpoints in this game is the way I understand it at least, is they each have a default spawn location, and saving and quitting off of those checkpoints puts you at the default spawn point for that checkpoint. And in most cases, it's not very useful, but in some cases it warps us a bit forward in the map or even skips an animation, which is really helpful. And in that specific case there, we can use it to skip a cutscene. It's one of the few instances in the game where I can think of that sort of save and quit being used. So here I'll be doing a trick called box jump. Hopefully I get it. I didn't get it. So what I was trying to do there was jump on top of the box in order to avoid climbing on top of it. That's all you really need to know about that. And there I did a trick called ledge running. So there's a feature in this game where you can look behind yourself while running. I believe some other first-person horror games have this. In this game, like with the door opening animation, it shrinks down your hitbox, so you can use that to run across the ledge. Normally there'd be an animation where you'd shimmy across the ledge, but the animation is really slow. So we have a couple of enemies to dodge here, but they're not too difficult to avoid actually. I did get hit there by that enemy, but that's fine. So one thing that I consider RNG in this game is enemy pathing, but it's not actually random. It turns out that the enemy's pathing is entirely dependent on your movement. So if you move in certain ways, you can make them path towards that spot you move towards, and then you can jump past them in order to dodge them. The dodges in No Out of Bounds in particular aren't that difficult, but there's some in the other categories that are really hard. It isn't too difficult for the most part, though. I think anyone who picks up this game could get the dodges fairly easily. Even if you're new and you're scared about dodging the enemies, you can just run past them kind of slowly. Huh?
If you don't mind me asking, how did you get started speedrunning Outlast?
Oh, I can explain that in a little bit. I just have to do this quick dodge. Alright. So that's an enemy there called the Twins. They're actually called the Naked Twins, but you know, I want to keep this PG-13. So if you don't get that dodge, oh, I have to get this clip. Oh, come on, this door is being annoying. Okay. So with that dodge I did with the Naked Twin, you have to avoid getting hit by him, because if you do get hit by him, you die instantly. And there I did another door clip to hit a trigger around the corner there for this little cutscene. So yeah, how I got into Outlast speedrunning, well, about 4 years ago, or a little less than 4 years ago, a runner named St. Connor ran this for SGDQ 2014, and it was at that point that I picked up speedrunning the game, because I was really impressed with that run, with a category named All Chapters. That's the category he ran, at least. And I've been following the speedrunning scene pretty much since this game came out, but I never actually ran it till like July of 2014. And even though it's like, I guess one of the more underappreciated horror game runs, it's actually a really cool run. And I've stuck with it for quite a long time. But anyways, I'm going to do another trick here called door boosting. Oops, if I can get it. Okay. So it took me a couple of tries, but we got there. So, similarly to the door clip glitch I mentioned earlier, or explained earlier, doors only have collision whenever they're standing still. So we jump, with door boosting, we jump into a door right as it regains collision, and that boosts us on top of the door. I did it there to skip a bit of ledge shimmying, similarly to the ledge run I did earlier. I want to focus on this part because it's really difficult. I'm going to take this a bit slowly to be safe. Okay, that's the first part down. You still have it? Yeah, alright. So by doing that, we not only skipped going through the crawl space there, but we also skipped shimmying through that other crawl space. I believe getting both of those in a run saves about 10 seconds. 5 for each of them. That's actually the first time I've ever gotten that in a run, so I'm pretty glad I got that. So far I've mentioned tricks, like this little dodge, that save little bits of time. Like with most other survival horror games, this game at high level play is all about very minor optimizations like that. To the point where, in the 80% category for this game, literally every millisecond matters. And you have to play pretty much perfectly to get a good time. So there I'll be doing another save and quit on the second valve there. As the animation starts, and that skips, not only skips the animation of turning the valve, but also warps me in the middle of the room that I was just in earlier, where I was avoiding Chris Walker. So I did a actually fairly tricky jump to go down that ladder and skip having to climb down it. That's actually a lot trickier than it looks, but there's a consistent setup for it, which I did there. There's a faster setup for that, but I'm not very confident with it, so I just went with baby strats there. So the reason that worked is because with the setup that I did when I did that jump, I landed on a very tiny invisible ledge, and that tiny invisible ledge was just high enough to where I didn't die from fall damage, and the fall I do immediately after that makes me take no damage. That second ladder jump that I did is a lot easier because you fall from a less higher height, I guess. Yeah. We have a quick crawl space to go through here before we get to the last section of sewers. I'm gonna try to use my night vision as the least amount that I can. Normally with the night vision camera, you're very tight on batteries, because once you run out, like, the night vision makes you lose battery power, and in casual play with this game you'd have to scavenge the environment for batteries in order to refill your camera battery. But in a speedrun, especially no out of bounds where you're allowed to save and quit, it's actually not that bad to manage, because you can just save and quit and the game reloads all your batteries to a default amount of 2 out of 10. It's really useful. And there in water, I sort of glossed over what I was doing there because I was explaining battery management, but in water there, movement is normally very slow, but you can pretty much negate that by just sort of bunny hopping through it. You don't want to spam jump though when you go through water because that makes you lose speed gradually. So I space out my jumps with a certain timing in order to get the most distance out of my jumps that I possibly can. Basically what I do there in that last section of the sewers is I wait about a split second after our main character, Miles, lands on the ground, and I jump again. So there's a save and quit I do here as I go out of this crawl space, but it wastes time RTA, so I'm not going to do it. So the reason we save and quit there at that point that I mentioned is because it gets rid of lag on those stairs I just went up. But the lag played nice there. Usually it doesn't. And this whole section we're doing here is leading up to a big cutscene that I know you guys will enjoy to some degree. Although there's a pretty graphic part of it, so maybe some of you won't, but that's fine. There's still some pretty great lines that the character in that cutscene says. So we have a brief chase sequence here before that big cutscene. And at the start of it, I'm going to do a little glitch here, which is called crouch jumping, or at least I call it crouch jumping. So whenever you go out of a crawl space or event like that, you press jump as soon as you land and continue pressing jump as soon as you land, and that lets you get short little bunny hops like that while you're in a crouched state. And when you're in those when you do those jumps in that crouch state, you have more speed than your normal jumps, or at least it looks like that. So you can use that, like right here, to save a little bit of time. Again, jumping towards objects is slightly faster. And when I jump across this gap, I'm going to do another save and quit. This skips the animation of Miles climbing up onto the ledge and warps us a bit forward in the map. And something I didn't mention with save and quits is that when you load in, you can run forward and mash jump in order to gain control and get to your top movement speed as soon as possible. And the first couple of seconds when you load in, there's no cooldown on your jumps to where Miles does a little stumble animation whenever you jump. So you can do that to save a bit of time as well. And when I went in that room, I closed the door just so those enemies that came up to me wouldn't hit me when I opened the dumbwaiter. If they do manage to do that, that's a couple of seconds lost, because whenever they hit you, it delays the interaction prompt for the dumbwaiter. So yeah, this is the every runner's favorite part of the video game, which is a 4-minute unskippable cutscene. There are ways to skip this cutscene, but that involves going out of bounds. So you can read any donations if you have any, or any plugs you want to make. But
don't have any donations
oh.
to read yet. But hello, everybody. I am Maple. I'll be oh, excuse me, I forgot to mention. Okay, I'm Maple. I'll be hosting for the next couple of games. I just want to.
You know, I love the mountain air up here at night. You want to head out?
Actually, I want to turn down the game volume really quick because it's a bit louder than you are.
Oh, is it? Okay, well, I'll try to speak up.
No, that's okay, I got it.
We have a donation incentive for $50 for Mario and Luigi Partners in Time. You'll get to see the Fawful cutscene. It's one of my favorite cutscenes from the game. We're a bit of a ways off from there, but we can definitely do that. Air Control, which I hear is a fantastic game, is going to have an anime cutscene donation incentive for $50. We've got a bit of a bid war for the trainer name and the name for Kyogre, as well as our HM slave names, question mark. So we have a few donation incentives to look out for the next the next little bit. So why don't you guys keep an eye on that?
I actually tried playing Air Control recently and I couldn't get past the first airplane minigame. Like, I couldn't figure out the controls for it. Your flags in chat, it's the one where you fly, the first sort of mini game or gameplay section where you fly the airplane to the city. Just a quick aside there.
Balancing fixed. I'm hearing that there's some issues with you guys not really being able to hear me very well.
This is a very beautiful ceiling, by the way. This isn't to avoid lag or anything. I just do this for fun. You also avoid seeing the gore. Again, because I want to keep the stream PG-13.
So if you have a moment, you might want to turn up Maples on your end.
Me too. So yeah, what's happening now is Traeger here, this character, has essentially captured us. He gives us this long-winded speech, and spoilers, he cuts off our fingers, as you'll see in just a second. This is also the game, which was part of why I was pointing my camera at the ceiling. Oh, and he adds insult to injury and slaps us in the face. Yeah, thanks, Traeger.
That's a big pair of scissors.
Yeah. And in case you didn't see the damage that was done to our hands, well, there you go.
Oh.
Yeah, thank you, Miles, for showing that off. Miles, by the way, is the main character we're playing as. I'll explain more about him later. So yeah, we have a quick time event there, where we have to get ourselves out of the wheelchair by moving our mouse. The prompt sort of implies that you have to shake your mouse really hard, but that's actually not the case. As long as you're moving your mouse, the quick time event will go at the same speed. Because it goes at the same speed every time. So that first half of the run before that big cutscene was sort of the easier part of the run with relatively minor skips. After that, in this latter half, we'll be doing really big skips, and it's probably the hardest part of the entire run, because all the skips I'll be doing from here on out are really hard to get down. High level play when you have to do them quickly and you can't afford to make any mistakes. So I did that wall right there because Trigger will open the doors in just a second. And with my hitbox clipped into the door like this, it'll let me leave the room as soon as he opens them. And something I didn't mention is, whenever we go into crawl spaces like this one, we jump at them at an angle in order to get a quicker climbing animation. It's actually harder than you might think because there's an exact angle towards certain crawl spaces or ledges you have to jump at in order to get them. One of the things that differentiates high level play and new players. So we have a chase sequence here with Traeger, but there's an easy way to avoid him, which you just saw me use there. We bait him into that room, and then we close the door on him.
Do we have a moment to check the volume here?
Do I have to pause the game, or no?
No, I just turned my own output volume.
Okay.
So if that doesn't fix the problem, then I need to do some more work here.
Just out of curiosity, what is my current time, by the way?
You are at 23 minutes, 10 seconds.
That sounds about right for RTA. Also, I had a bit of a problem getting out of that vent. That's fine. So after I got this key, Traeger will try to break through the door. I'm going to do a little strat here where I lean into that door frame that gets my hitbox into this door. So as soon as he opens it, I can just leave the room. That's actually one of the trickier parts casually because you're in a very confined space. And the animation cancel that key turn animation.
How precise are these setups to just get by those guys, by the way?
For no out of bounds in particular, they're not too precise. Although the one I did with the naked twin earlier can be a bit tricky. What's tricky is the major skips, like the one I'm about to do. Especially in some other glitch categories like 100%. But anyways, normally in this last part of the chapter there'd be a whole section where there's a fire in a cafeteria just below me. And we'd have to do another fetch quest like the one we did with the generator section. Where in this fetch quest we'd have to turn on a couple of sprinklers in order to put out that fire. But by doing this skip right here, we can go straight to the end of the chapter and avoid having to do any of that. This point right here is the trickiest part of the skip, because if you move too close to that archway on that where I did that save and quit, you'll deload the level, and that, for no out of bounds run, that would invalidate your run. So you have to be careful to not do that. So right after that, we'll be moving into another big skip. It's another wall ride, and this will let us skip half of the courtyard. Just chapter 1 currently. Oops. Okay, got it. So this wall ride is really tricky because, well, it might not look like it, but it is. Because this wall that I'm moving along really likes to push you off when you move along it. That mostly happens whenever you try to just run along it. So a little safe, and I think actually faster strat I do, is jumping along the wall like I did there. So with that, we've already skipped half of the courtyard. So similarly to the ledge run I did at the start of the prison chapter, I will be doing another ledge run in this chapter in a little bit. And it's the most annoying trick of the run, for me at least, because it's stupidly precise, and it can add up to a lot of time loss on this point in the game alone. So I have to basically just jump at a certain angle in order to run across the ledge like that. That was actually really good. Got it first try. So if your angle is wrong there when you do that jump onto the ledge, you'll either miss the ledge completely or get pushed off the ledge when you try to move on it. And immediately following that, we'll have another encounter with Chris. Before I go in this crawl space here, I have him hit me, or at the very least try to hit me. If he doesn't do that, then he'll grab me as I go through the crawl space and throw me out, which wastes a lot of time. I did say there would be big skip after big skip. We'll be doing yet another one here. And it's considered by many to not only be the hardest skip of this run, but also the hardest skip of the entire game. And we'll be using it to skip essentially all this chapter. More like 80% of it. So it's another wall ride yet again, as the wall ride glitch is the main glitch of this category. It's the longest wall ride in the game though. So we have to keep our tiny hitbox for quite a while in order to actually get this skip. So this is the hardest part, and I want to concentrate on it. Alright, got that. We just need to not lose our hitbox. So that's the hardest part, by the way, getting that little crouch through the window there and the jump on top of the table. I'll explain it in a bit. And we got it, cool. So the reason that jump on top of the table is so hard is if your angle is even very slightly off, your hitbox will expand. And whenever you do a wall ride and your hitbox expands back to its normal size, you have to start the entire wall ride over again. And while I'm on the subject of wall rides, I'll just explain how hitboxes work in this. There's different sizes of hitbox. There's the default hitbox, which is, you know, just your normal size hitbox. There's the medium hitbox, which is about half the size or about 3/4 of the size of the normal hitbox. Then there's the very small hitbox, like the one I had during the skip I just did, where it's really tiny. I believe about 1/4 of the original size. That's not too important, though. Just wanted to mention that little tidbit. So here I'll be doing a jump that looks scary, but it actually isn't, because the timing for it is fairly lenient. If you do jump too late or too early, you'll fall off the planks there and die from fall damage, which you obviously don't want in a speedrun, because that means you'd have to reload the checkpoint and retry that jump, which wastes about, I'd say about 10 seconds, maybe a bit less than that. So anyways, we're in the second to last chapter of the game, the Return to Administration block, or Return to Admin block. We'll be doing the last major skip of the run here. And I think it's one of the more impressive looking ones for anyone who hasn't seen No Out of Bounds outside of the female word skip. Like with the female word skip, we'll be using it to skip pretty much 80% of this chapter. Actually more like 99% of it. So we'll be doing another wall ride yet again. And on this corner, by the way, you don't want to turn your camera too quickly, because if you do, you'll deload the level. Not only does that invalidate your run, but you'll also void out, which isn't good. And hopefully I got this jump.
We follow the rules. This is a professional stream. We have to follow every single rule.
Yeah, definitely. This jump is really annoying. Usually a sub works 100% of the time, but it's not working for me for some reason. Okay, it worked that time. So as you can see there, that jump is really annoying. That railing that I tried jumping on top of really does not like to regain collision, and it can take quite a while to get that jump. But in that case, I did another door clip there before entering this chapel room and grabbing the elevator key there, because normally at this point there'd be a, not really a cutscene, but more like a cinematic. I kind of think of it as like cutscenes in Half-Life 2, where you'd have to watch Father Martin die by burning himself on a cross. But yeah, but by doing this door glitch, that door glitch I did, you can skip having to watch that. And I did say, by the way, this would have some pretty graphic content. I was not lying. The sequel to this game actually, speaking of like crosses and religious related stuff and blah blah blah, the sequel to this game actually has an entire plot centered around a religious cult, which I think is actually pretty interesting. But the sequel is complete crap. Don't play it. So with that glitch I just did, there's sort of a sound glitch that occurs afterwards, because the game still thinks, or I guess still thinks, we're in the cutscene where Father Martin dies, so it plays the music from that cutscene until we activate another cutscene coming up with Chris Walker. And can overlap with the chase music that plays in this area, which is, and it's funny when it does happen. So yeah, we're in the last chapter of the game now, which is the underground lab, and as far as like breaking is concerned, it's actually fairly Loctite, which is odd considering all the other skips I've been doing. I guess when they got to this point, they realized how broken the game was and decided that they needed to fix some things, and they just put a bunch of invisible walls out of bounds, I believe is what they did. You can go out of bounds in this chapter, and I have found a method for doing that, but that method involves modifying the game files, which obviously would not be allowed for runs on the leaderboard.
Once again, we are professionals here.
Yeah, exactly. So that cutscene just there, Chris Walker just died. And that brings up a character named the Wall Rider, who's that black ghost you just saw there, who's the main antagonist of the game. And at this point, I'll try to explain the plot as best as I can. We play as this reporter named Miles Upshore, who gets an anonymous tip from a guy named Wayland Park, who's actually a character for a DLC of this game called Whistleblower. And this anonymous tip is about some wrongdoings a company called the Murkoff Corporation was doing in this asylum that we've been in the whole game, which is Mount Massive. And basically what Mount Massive is doing here is some experimentation involving nanobots. And the Wall Rider that I just mentioned is a result of those nanobot experiments. Some people in the asylum, including Father Martin, actually form a cult that worships the Wall Rider as a sort of god. But he's not actually anything else. But basically he's just a result of the nanobot experiments. He's not actually a spirit of any living being. He's completely artificial. And here we meet a character named Dr. Wernicke, who gives us a plot dump of basically what I just explained. So, in that cutscene, Wernicke gave us the task of killing a guy named Billy Hope, who is the person who is controlling the Wall Rider this entire game. In fact, you'll see the Wall Rider just to my left there. So in order to kill Billy Hope, we have to do 3 things. Well, the main thing is we have to shut off his life support that's been keeping him alive this whole time. And to do that, we have to turn off his life support fluid by turning a valve. What else? Cut the wires to his life support system. And then turn off the failsafe to that system. It involves quite a bit of running around, which is why this chapter is so long. It's actually the longest chapter of the game, save for Mail Ward, with the big cutscene we saw earlier. And this chapter, since there's no huge skips in it, is all about little optimizations, like I kind of touched on earlier. Like, for example, opening certain doors so you don't have to move as far. And like right here, where I turn corners very sharply when going around corners. It might not seem like much, but it makes a huge difference between, like I said earlier, high-level play and maybe people who are brand spanking new to this game and just picked it up. So there I did a little skip. I vaulted over the railing there and landed on top of those gas tanks. And as soon as I landed on the gas tanks, I jumped off them in order to get back down. That saves having to run down the stairs there. Again, more optimal movement by turning my corners sharply. And with doors like this where they're open ajar, you don't have to mash left click to open them. Whenever doors are open ajar, the main character, in this case Miles, does an animation where he pushes the door open. These are a very long flight of stairs. It's not quite like that one area from Final Fantasy VII where there's also a lot of stairs, but it's pretty darn close. And there I jumped at a certain point in order to get a quick climb animation. If you jump too early, you'll fall and then die from the fall damage. But luckily there's a checkpoint right at the point where you jump across the gap, so it's not that big of a time loss. Jump there to climb on top of the railings to save a bit of time. Alright, so here we'll be doing a very flashy skip, and I'll explain it afterwards. It's one of the cooler looking skips of the game. And we got it, cool. So that's the Superman jump. As you saw there, I jumped into seemingly a random spot, but that spot that I jumped at has a trigger, is the trigger for a cutscene. Normally what you do to hit that cutscene trigger is go back the same way I just went when going up those stairs. And here we'll be doing an animation skip by vaulting into that wall. Now when we fall down, Miles doesn't have any room to do the hard fall animation, so it just doesn't do it, and we can move along. And when I pressed that button, I did another animation cancel with the crouch key. So at this point in the game, we've successfully killed Billy Hope, as you can see with that bloodied up little orb there. But the wall rider here needs a living human in order to survive, since that's how it was created with the nanobot experiments. And in order to do that, he inhabits our body. The bad thing about that is our movement is very slow and hobble-like now. But it's not that big of a deal. Occasionally there's a glitch you can get here called baby legs, where basically if you animation cancel the button that I animation canceled too quickly, you'll be in a crouch-like state in this last section where your movement speed is really slow. But I didn't get it there. It's like very rare. I've only seen it happen to 2 people. Time is coming up. What?
What does baby legs look like exactly then?
I can send you a Twitch clip in Discord afterwards.
Alright, yeah.
But anyways, time is coming up in a little bit. Yeah, I did a little skip there, by the way, when I climbed up on that railing, but don't worry about it. It will be as soon as my hands touch the ground in 1 second. And time.
Alright, on my watch, that was a 40:55.
Wow, that's actually really good. I did another marathon run of this category, and I got 42:32. So that's a pretty good improvement, considering that's only like 53 seconds off my RTA PV. That was probably really high in-game time, because as with most PC games, this is timed without loads normally.
Yeah.
And since I was about 4 minutes under estimate, there's something I'd like to try and show off if we have time.
How long would it take?
Like, I think 3 minutes, 2 to 3.
Yeah, go ahead, as long as it's pretty short.
Okay, I'll try to keep it short. Alright, so for this attempted glitch showcase, I'm actually going to switch over to the DLC that I briefly mentioned during my run. I'm going to load this checkpoint right here. So at this point in the DLC, there's a major chase sequence with a character named Eddie Gluskin. But there's a way you can sort of break that chase sequence, which I'll show you really quick here. So the idea behind this is you... Oh, I actually messed it up, so I have to reload real quick. I won't spoil exactly what's going to happen, you just need to see for yourself. And I accidentally aggroed the enemy I was trying to do the glitch on, so I had to reload. So there's a key I have to grab to progress to the next section, but before I do that, I'm going to push this thing and open this door, and then go back out and get the key. And Gluskin will appear here at the end of the hallway, right there. So I want to lure him over here before I go in the crawl space, just for a bit of safety. Don't worry, he won't grab me. See? So by doing that, we've done something that's a little bit broken. You'll see in a little bit. You might not be able to see it very well right now. So yeah, we have officially cloned Gluskin. I'm not exactly sure what triggers that. It just happens.
Amazing.
And it's not over yet, because that character is still there whenever we go through a cutscene. Which I'll demonstrate here really quick. This should only take about a minute and a half. Also, side note. Also, side note, by the way, this cutscene is pretty graphic. Way more graphic than the Traeger cutscene, actually. So avert your eyes.
Oh, I see.
I'll try to turn the camera though, so you guys don't have to look at it. Just swipe my mouse as hard as I can.
We're all banned from Twitch. Too graphic.
Advance apologies, Keizaron.
Sorry, Keys. Banned from Twitch forever.
Alright, so pay attention to the enemy. You can see he's still punching us during the cutscene. And he'll continue to do that as soon as the cutscene ends and we gain control. You can try to get away from him, but most of the time that I've tried to get away from him, I usually die. So we'll see what happens. I'm just wondering how the Twitch chat is reacting to this. Hi.
Hi.
Please get away from me. Yeah, I died, just as I expected.
Just stand there.
Yeah. Yep.
Alright.
Rip.
Well, again, thank you for the run. We really appreciate it. Awesome run.
Yeah, I really hope the chat enjoyed that. A quick side I do want to make is this is a great horror game speedrun if you want to get into horror game runs. It's not that hard to learn, I would say. And we do in fact have a Discord. There's a link to it on speedrun.com/outlast/forums, I believe. There's a link there to our community Discord, and if you're interested in learning the game at all, you can go there. We're all really willing to help you out, myself included. That's all I have. Whoops,
All right.
I accidentally turned on debug. Don't worry about it.
Alright, so, again, thank you so much for the run. If you haven't already in chat, be sure to follow Nerd there at the
Yeah.
link that the bot posted. Again, thank you, and have a good night.
No
We
problem.
appreciate it. You can go ahead and get stream whenever.